Welcome back to Level Headed Gamer, guys. My name is Joseph. Today I got an interesting conversation I wanted to talk to you guys with. And this last week we got the announcement about a new handheld system called the Steam Deck coming from Valve, which will be essentially a mini PC that'll be able to play various PC games in a handheld format with no kinds of issues. And of course, the first question on many people's minds was, is the Switch going to be outdated now or outperformed? And I thought it'd be a fun conversation to have here in this video to talk about the different comparisons and in the end kind of have this talking point of whether it's going to be better than Switch, more worth it than Switch, or Switch is just going to completely dominate. But let's get right into the conversation without any further ado, and I'm going to start with the price. We've seen the price for the Steam Deck, and it's not a cheap one, starting at $399 for just a 64 gig, and of course going up in price for $529 for a 256 gig, which is the one I pre-ordered myself, and as there's a 64 $649 for 512 gigs, plus you're able to obviously add some storage, and what looks like the purchase comes with the case, which I think is a nice little touch, because that does matter when it comes to the Switch. The cheapest one being $199 for the Switch Lite, then the original being $299, and of course the Switch Oled, which has just been announced, for $349. And I think an SD card for Switch is kind of an essential thing if you're going to have, especially downloading any games that you can be downloading, and some even off the cartridge are quite big install sizes, so an SD card is required. Not to mention if you're going to be traveling, a case, so it's going to get close to a $400 mark, just like the Steam Deck. And then I want to also kind of, in terms of price, they match hand in hand, but Switch is more accessible, and it's much easier for parents especially to get it for kids, which is, I think, is a huge market for Switch, is the younger audience. And of course the older audience are captured by Switch's original games as well. In terms of price, I don't think there's much contention here that Switch does win over, and that Steam Deck overall is just a more premium kind of high-end hardcore product, as I would put it. In my opinion, that's kind of how I see it. But in terms of specs, Steam Deck is running a Zen 2 AMD modified chip, and according to Valve, it's going to be equivalent to a PS4 and Xbox One power, and I'm going to assume we're talking about the base models and not the Pro versions. Of course, both screens, now the new OLED screen for Switch is going to be a 7-inch screen, and the Steam Deck is also a 7-inch touchscreen, both outputting 720p. And honestly, for a handheld system, you don't need more than 720p. I'd rather have lower resolution but higher graphics detail, and just kind of run at 720p, higher frame rate. To me, that's more than adequate. But essentially, they're about running the same type of screen and slightly more power on the Steam Deck, meaning it's going to be a more powerful system, being able to do more, and not to mention you can customize your games in terms of graphics settings to have them perform the way you want to. Both systems will have fast resume. Well, we know that Switch has the fast resume, but the Steam Deck will also have that feature. In terms of battery life, again, from the initial reports of Valve, they're saying it's going to run several hours on the high intensity games, which I think is fair to say it's about the same as Switch, in that 3 to 5 hour mark if you're playing games like Legend of Zelda, or if you're going to be playing Control, for example, on the Steam Deck. The one thing that they really differentiate themselves with is their controllers, or the controller options you have, because obviously the Switch is going to have the motion controls that we know, and I personally do like the Switch controllers. First of all, you can use them as 2 controls if you're playing something like Mario Party. Not to mention the whole motion controls for certain games is really awesome. But the precision pads really have me sold, because it's really hard to play first person and third person shooters on Switch, and this will make it a lot more precise with those pads if you ever need to zone in and kind of be more competitive. And again, from what IGN said in the kind of a couple hours that they played, is that they said it feels very close to a PC, which I doubt, but it's still high praise, saying that it's more precise than a Switch. Obviously, both systems are going to have a dock that you'll be able to connect to a TV, or in this case with the Steam Deck, you'll be able to connect it to a PC as well and kind of use it as a PC. Well, I should say I should be able to connect it to a monitor. One thing I think the Steam Deck really wins over in is the fact that it has Bluetooth. It really pissed me off in Switch and that they never updated it, and I don't think OLED version is going to have it either, is that the convenience of Bluetooth to connect your headphones with no problem. You have to buy third-party peripherals that create input lag or sound lag in terms of, so it's never 100%, and then it has the headphone jack on the top, which the Steam Deck does as well, but at the very least Steam Deck is going to have the Bluetooth option for you to connect your wireless headset, which I think most people at this point are using wireless earbuds when they're up and about and playing on the go. But the price and even the specs aside, I think the most important thing when we consider buying a specific console, I think, is the games. Of course, the Steam Deck, it will allow you to play not only the Steam Store games seamlessly, but it will allow you to install Epic Store and Game Pass games, Ubisoft, EA, basically any store you can think of, you'll be able to play there because essentially it's a PC, it's a handheld PC, and that's how they want you to think. So much so, it is running on a Linux OS, but you can't reinstall it to be completely Windows OS. So it's really up to you what you do with it, not to mention, although it's not 100% legal, emulation is going to be a huge element whether some people buy this system or not. And I think I'm going to be utilizing some emulation myself, because that's one of the biggest draws was for me for the PSP back in the day, is that I was able to put my PS1 games on it and play them on the go. But all that aside, third-party games, of course, performing better on Steam Deck. Switch will have absolutely the best library, because it's super hard to beat Switch's or Nintendo's original library of games, because they're some of the best in the business and they're the only place you can play them is on the Switch. And of course the third-party games are suffering on Switch because you don't have the customization graphics of Steam Deck, but I think most of us who really buy a Switch is for those Marios and those Zeldas, for those unique games that you're not going to get anywhere else, the Monster Hunter games. So I think from that perspective, Switch really wins over Steam Deck, because Steam Deck is not going to offer really any exclusive games that you can't play, whether it be on PlayStation or on Xbox. If you just have a regular PC, there's no reason, honestly speaking, to own a Steam Deck if you're trying to play something unique that you can't do on the PC. It's just a different way to play your PC games or some of those other titles that you can get on the Xbox or a PS4. So I think Switch really wins over in this department. Not to mention, when people always say, oh, it's about now the Switch is going to be outsold, that said, it has real serious competition on the market. As much as I've already pre-ordered my Steam Deck and I'm excited for it, it is not going to outsell Switch, because that's what they said about PSP, that's what they said about PS Vita. Despite I having both of those systems and loving them, they just were not able to capture the same unique titles of Nintendo Switch. Not to mention the current sales of Nintendo Switch is at 84.59 million units sold, which is almost outselling the lifetime sales of PS3 and slightly outselling Xbox 360 in just a 4-year period. We're not talking about for other years to come and how it's going to surpass other systems as well. It's just an unstoppable force because it's a low cost of point of entry, and you don't need anything for a Switch. You don't need a TV, you don't need anything. It's perfect for kids. There's different versions of it that are much cheaper. $400 is a lot for a portable system. So I think from that perspective, Switch does have competition, but it's not serious competition. It's going to continue dominating. It's going to continue driving its own kind of agenda and all of its things, maybe some third-party games. And because of how high-end the Steam Deck is, I think it's going to be more for the hardcore crowd like me and like maybe some other people who really want to play the PC games on the go. And many PC players are, and they'll tell you this themselves, they're PC master race. They want the maximum frames, the maximum resolution, the maximum graphics. Otherwise, they would just can play the game on the Xbox. And a lot of people don't really play on the go. Like, I'm a personal trainer because I'm traveling all around. I do play games on the go quite a lot. I've beaten actually Zelda Breath of the Wild on the go for the most part because I was traveling back and forth all day, and I would do that 5 days a week. It was very easy for me to beat the game. So I can see that being very useful for me, maybe for other people who are on the go. My friend is an EMS driver, so when he has downtime, he'll play as well on his Switch. So he pre-ordered the system as well, but I don't think it's really going to compete with Steam Deck is not going to be able to compete with Switch in the end. It's going to be a great product that's going to be introduced for a certain kind of people. I would love to hear from you guys. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree? Do you think it is going to compete directly with Switch? Do you think they're trying to compete with Switch? And what are your opinions on the Steam Deck? Are you going to be pre-ordering it yourself? Are you going to be buying it? Or are you going to kind of bypass it overall and you're not really interested in what it has to offer, or even mobile gaming? Let me know down below in the comments. I just thought it'd be fun to have this kind of conversation now that the information and the pre-orders are out. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Peace out and have a good one.